James, Keldon Revin, Nisa Enarthio, Celine, Trevor Nadal, Two-Step, and UAX Step. And before we start, I just want to lead us off, sort of set the mood, with, we published a dev blog a few weeks ago, just talking about some of the quotes, some quotes from CCP regarding the CSM. So I just wanted to read off a couple of those for you because I felt like they were really good in shaping just what the CSM does for CCP. So this one's from CCP Unifex, the executive producer of EVE Online. I've worked more closely with the CSM7 during 2012 than with any previous CSM. During this time, we've really worked on defining what being a stakeholder really means and had a number of iterations of testing it out in practice. I believe we have been at a point for a while now where the contribution of the development process from the CSM, their feedback on features being developed, and input on features and ideas is invaluable. They give a great viewpoint from us, from that of us within CCP, representing both their own constituencies and the player base as a whole. Their voice is very much heard and is helping us as we continuously strive to deliver a better world for our players. I'm looking forward to meeting the new CSM and helping to quickly build a strong team that I see as an integral part of the online. So that's from our executive producer, John Lander, CCP Unifex. And then CCP Solomon, the technical producer for Team 5.0, the team that the CSM7 has been a stakeholder on for the past 4 months. Since its inception, the CSM has gone through significant change both in quality of its interactions with CCP and its value as perceived by the player base. Initially, it's fair to say there was doubt in the community as to whether this player-elected group was really capable of effecting change within CCP and bringing about the fixes the players were asking for. Let me make it clear. The passion, insistence, dedication, and sheer pig-headed stubbornness of this group has had a significant impact on what we develop and how we develop it. Many of the changes in Retribution and again in Odyssey were a direct result of interaction with community feedback and suggestion from CSM7. Whether it's the change to factional warfare, ship balancing, war declarations, or the upcoming star-based quality of life fixes, the feedback and sanity checking has been beyond compare. CSM7 represents a huge leap forward in keeping the concerns of the player base at the forefront. They have brought about change, worked damn hard, you should buy them all a beer.
Yes, please.
So for many of you, this will be the first time seeing CSM7 in person, so I've created this helpful slide, which corresponds directly to their seating order, much to their disagreement, so to help you sort of figure out who you're talking to and all that sort of thing. So if you want to start taking questions, go ahead.
There we go. We're good. 2 questions. One is, if you could go back in time and change one thing about any of the decisions you made or any of the things you did while being on CSM7, what would that be?
Do we want to start from you, Sleep?
Hello? Oh, this thing's good. Okay. I think that the one thing I would try to suggest to CSM8, and I know they're already wanting to try and do this, is try and increase the number and the frequencies of what we like to call the town hall meetings. We tried a couple of different formats over the course of the term, and they progressively got better as the term got longer on. And what we ended up doing was kind of a hybrid format. We used EVE University's mobile server, which can hold a lot of people, and would stream it live on EVE Radio at the same time. And we'd have a couple people doing, Q&A as people would type stuff in an in-game channel. And we tried as hard as we could to get information out, but the level of interaction and information that we were getting from CCP was quite honestly a lot higher in quality and volume than anything we'd had before. So trying to balance, figuring out what of that we could say to people and trying to find an effective method to get what we were doing out was a bit of a challenge. And that's something that I think that the next CSM is going to have quite an interesting time trying to figure out.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty much what Celine said. The toughest decisions were always the tactical decisions about, how much whether or not the best thing to do in order to get a particular end goal that we wanted to do for the community was to harness the community or to just work it internally, because there are always trade-offs there. And I think that experimenting with different and perhaps perhaps more subtle ways of engaging the community is something that I think we should have put perhaps a little more thought into, and I hope the CSMA will do as well, because we're not in an era of, where we're just banging our head against the wall with CCP anymore. We're actually in a position where we can have significant influence, and so it's not a matter of turning out the villagers with the pitchforks and torches anymore. It's a more subtle environment, and it's a much more difficult environment in terms of making those decisions. I think that's going to be a big challenge for CSM8, is finding the right balance in terms of making the right tactical and strategic decisions to get CCP to not so much to do what we'd like them to do, but because they're doing that, but to do more of what we'd like them to do.
I think I'm pretty happy with the decisions I made this year. I think there were always small things that you say, oh, maybe I could have approached this a little differently, but I think it's a lot easier to decide those things in hindsight. But when you're in the moment, you have to make decisions, and I think all of us made pretty good decisions this year.
I would agree. I think consistency in communication is one of the big ones. This is something I experimented with, trying to write these reports that were very labor intensive, and there was just a lot of times where you'd sit down and start to work on something, and there'd be some other pressing issue that would come up, and I think it's if anything, it's time management's a very, very challenging responsibility for CSM members, and I've tried to communicate the best I can, try to make myself available, but it could have been more structured, and it could have been more consistent throughout the year.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to keep this kind of boring and just echo the sentiments of what everyone else said. First, I thought we did a pretty great job overall. Like, there was never a moment where I said, man, I wish I could get a time machine and not say that or not do that. But other than that, I mean, yeah, just more consistent communication would be great. Just because there are just so many players that have no idea what the CSM does, and I don't really surround myself with those types of players. So I'm usually oblivious to it until like the voting begins, and people are like, what's this CSM stuff? And then I feel a little bit of guilt, or I guess space guilt, that I haven't like engaged more people and like pulled them from local and say, hey, let's just be brilliant. Let me tell you about this a little bit. But other than that, yeah, I thought we did great. I wouldn't change anything.
I agree what guys said. Maybe have only one thing to add, that there is not every CCP guy is still communicating with us as do other teams, and that's what I would like to change. And of course, communication with community, certainly on FarmFest. I have found Russian guys who don't know what CSM is, and it was horrible to me, because we are doing a great job and trying to do our best.
My final question relates to the voting system. It's been changed several times over the years. We now are using, as I understand, a different system where you can drag people's portraits, and it's some kind of algorithm. I'm not good with numbers, really bad at them. But it is different from just you could one vote, one person. And I think that's a step in the right direction, but if you could come to CCP and say, hey, this is exactly how the voting system should be, do you think that you would change it, or would you keep it similar to the way it is now?
Well, I should probably answer that one.
Yeah, we'll direct this to I think that the SCV voting system is a huge improvement, but I think that the actual ballot entry system that was used this year had some serious problems at the beginning. It was not shown to CSM in advance. If it had been, those problems would have been pointed out in detail.
Real subtle.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's still room for improvement on it. In fact, I actually sent CCP a little Java scriptlet that actually fixed the voting page to add the UI features that were necessary. And that partially got implemented later in the election. But I'm sure we'll have a discussion about that and a few other things at the next summit. and CSM8 will be able to provide some input onto that.
And I'd like to actually give a little input to this conversation as well, in that I really like the system of STV, single transferable vote. I think it's a very fair system. I think it solves a lot of problems, of which first past the post, the previous voting system, in which you clicked one person and that was your vote. There was a lot of problems with that in the terms that if you were more organized, your vote had a greater chance of having more power in the election. I think STV solves that, so it really puts the organized voter and the layman who's just coming in completely isolated from any group and voting their preferences, it puts them in a much, much, much more even playing field. I also think that there are definite changes we can make to the UI. This year was our first time doing single transferable vote. We obviously had some trip-ups, but we fixed many of those during the election, early on the election. And I think that we have a slew of lessons that we know now and can really apply those to CSM9. I have basically a laundry list of dream wishes that I'm just going to be badgering people for a full year to get done. But I really think that STV is how we're going to be laying things out. How we actually do the UI and where you vote may change in the future to make it more accessible and easier to vote for everyone in the Avon Life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Xander Fina from Zebra Corps. How are you guys getting on? Some of you may know me. And I have two questions. The first question is, we know from the winter-summer minutes that there was a breakdown in communications between the CSM and CCP, which led to CCP Unifex apologising to you guys during the winter summit. So my first question is, how difficult were the first 6 months of CSM7, and why did that communication break down from your perspective?
Well, so I mean, I think calling it a communication breakdown is maybe making a little more of it than it was. What happened was we were trying an experiment where we were what's called a stakeholder with a team that was working on a feature for the Inferno release, and we got a little bit of information early on, and then we kind of got ignored for a while because they had a bunch of stuff to do and they were working on it, and some people dropped the ball. And we found, we noticed this, we talked about it, and we did a lot better with the stuff to Odyssey. I mean, we actually would have a meeting scheduled for yesterday with our team who was doing sprint reviews, but FanFest happened, so we couldn't do it. But in a couple of weeks, CSM8 will have that meeting, and I think it's going well. I think one of the things that's not visible to people outside the CSM is how stuff seems to always get better. I mean, I've been on CSM6, CSM7, and we have way more access, we have way more communication, we have way more influence than the previous CSMs, and that's true of CSM6 versus CSM5. If you talk to Trevor, I mean, that's always been the case. So, it wasn't like it went backwards, it was just going forwards a little less quickly than we would have liked.
And if I could add, yeah, when we talk about communication breakdowns, this is an issue that was very specific to the promised stakeholder interactions. There was, that information that wasn't being fed to us consistently. That's a completely different story than CCP like blacklisting or blackwalling us, or it wasn't like we weren't communicating with all of the other development teams as well. So there was still a fairly high degree of communication through Skype and through email and through us working with individual dev teams. It was just that stakeholder project in particular didn't go the way that we had hoped it would go the first time around.
Let me just add something real quick. I mean, I've seen this from both sides of the table, and this is essentially a buy-in process from both sides. And the stakeholder term has been bandied about. It originally came up back in CSM4. It's something that never really fully developed, and then CSM5 and 6 had a rather tough time due to events that most people are aware of. And CSM7, we decided early on this was something that we were really going to try to push for. And we got buy-in from from CCP Unifex, and the first iteration of it did not go as well as either side wanted to or expected it to do. But we both sides learned a lot from it, and the results are going to be pretty apparent, I think, at his keynote this afternoon.
Okay, so my second question, you guys communicate on a daily basis with CCP, and one of the most common methods you use for communication is Skype. And in the past few days, there's been a very public data dump of some of the conversations that have went on between CCP and the CSM. And I just want to know, A, how that came about, and B, what you guys think about that now public information that was obviously a very private channel between you guys.
So I'm just going to lead this off, and then I knew this question was coming. CCP is aware of this, but any statements, the CSM is free to make personal statements about their opinions on such a leak.
Okay. The individual that did this is a useless douchebag.
And has Hans apologised yet for that?
I think that the best way to describe this, the point of this is that this is the only time in my career in Eve when people on Kugu.com have been actively defending CCP. And that tells you everything you need to know about the person and the quality of and value of the information that he provides. They have top men on it. Top men.
Tall men. The only concern I have is that, you know, what I worry about is for CSM 8 that this might hurt them, and I urge people to not make a bigger deal of it than it is. I mean, I'm sure you're all going to go and read it, but, you know, if it just dies quietly, then that's better, and that's the guy who did this is seeking attention, and if you give him attention, if you put him on your podcast, let's say, that would just give him exactly what he wants. And if you just ignore him, then he's going to be sad, and he'll try and act out more, and, you know, I don't know what he'll do next, but.
Okay. I mean, and there was obviously sensitive information in, you know, that was released, and but I think the one thing that came from that is it confirmed a few things. It confirmed what the CSM 6 and CSM 7 have both said about that particular channel, which is that there's a lot of social ice-breaking sort of conversations that go on there, and that a lot of the serious business takes place elsewhere. It confirmed, you know, CCP working on some, you know, interesting things that players hope that they're working on, and it confirmed that the CSM was asking questions and doing our job and fulfilling our responsibilities to you know, make sure that they're doing a great job on the things that they're working on. So does it change anything? Does it you know? No, I don't believe it does.
Yeah, I think the best thing about the guy in question is up until a week ago, he was completely and utterly useless. Like he was basically a rock that you kind of left in the corner and forgot about. I think probably the best time we had as a CSM is when we were doing our CSM town hall, and he came on, and everyone on the CSM said, "Who was that guy? Was he just asking a question or no?" But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's literally just an attention seeking. And the worst part is he didn't even highlight any of the good parts. Like, yeah, he could have at least bolded the funny parts. So it's just like tens and thousands of lines. It's just boring.
I wish he was here so we could see him in 3D in person, but you guys have done a great job this year, so thank you very much.
I have a question about the Plex intervention directly that you spoke about in the CSM minutes in December, and it was just in the last meeting with Dr. N.U.G. How did the CSM, because he said the CSM came to the decision to talk to CCP about having them intervene on this? Because my question is under concern that since the market and Eve is supposed to be a sandbox, how did everybody come to the decision that CCP needed to intervene and not watch what the players were going to do?
Well, the role of the Eve Central Bank is not to affect the long-term prices of anything in the game, but they will inject liquidity into the Plex market to prevent short-term spikes, and in particular to prevent speculators from trying to engineer those kind of spikes. As an oversight body, we get, whenever they do such an intervention, we get a report on that intervention so that we know what they're up to, and so, you know, in case, and so we can give them some feedback as to whether or not we think that they're being underly aggressive or overly aggressive. To this point, we think that they have acted with extreme caution. They do it very rarely, and you know, they're basically just acting as a circuit breaker in the market. There's no evidence whatsoever that these interventions have in any way affected the long-term sort of price trends in the Plex market.
It also sounded like you were saying that it was somehow our idea or something, which CCP came to us with, they wanted to intervene. It was not like the CSM said, damn it, you must intervene in the Plex market. This is their decision, it's their game. You know, that was their plan.
Hey guys.
Yes.
Deirdre Val here. I run the Vote Match website this year. And I have a few questions for you guys. First of all, in sort of typical Eve fashion, you had a very simple voting system and then you made it way more complex. Now, it is much more fair and accurate, I'm sure. But I have encountered a lot of players who were sort of scared away by its complexity. Instead of having, you know, you click one button and you receive bacon. You now have to drag up to 14 names. Some people I noticed found it very intimidating. Are you not worried then that having a single transferable vote, 14-person ballot is going a bit too far and making it a bit too intimidating for players who aren't intimately familiar with the CSM process?
So I'd just like to lead this off briefly before we throw it over to the CSM. Excuse me. I think that while you can fill up a ballot to 14, I think that the basic functions of the voting system, essentially fill out your dream council in order of preference, is not overly complex. The actual calculation is rather complex, as most math is, besides counting, which first past the post uses. But one of the other things is that people who are not willing to fill out a 14-person ballot, people who fill out 1 or 2 or 3, the math actually works out, and we'll be giving out more statistics once the election results are announced on Saturday, on how much of a vote was expended based on how many you filled out. The money number is 5 or 6. So if you can fill out 5 or 6 people that you kind of like in order of preference, then you're good to go. And I think that anyone who actually sits down and looks at many of the platforms, except those who are very selective about who they want to vote for, can find 5 or 6 people that they like in order of preference.
I do agree with you, but the fact remains there's a lot of people that just found the way it was presented to be so intimidating that they simply said, well, I'm not going to bother.
Well, I think those are things that we can largely solve through better explanation and better UI.
So we are concerned. I mean, you asked if we're concerned. Of course we're concerned. We don't want, 10 people to be electing CSM 8. But, I think I'm hopeful that it's, some people are intimidated by the complexity, but some people are welcoming the fact that their vote really has more of an opportunity to count. That you can, that you can vote for someone who you don't think is going to win, and your vote will transfer down to someone who maybe will win, and that your vote is not going to be wasted. I mean, the statistics on the number of wasted votes in CSM 7 and in the past CSMs it's staggering, because there's not just the people who voted for people who don't get elected, but there's the people who gave too many votes to the people who are elected. I mean, me personally, I got way more votes than I needed. Maybe there could have been a second wormhole person sitting at this table. Is that fair?
No, 1 is enough. More than enough, actually.
And if I could add, I think this this accessibility barrier that you're referring to is a problem that's compounded with what's historically been a problem, which is lack of promotion of the CSM, lack of promotion of the elections, lack of explanation as to what we are, who we stand for. A big part of improving that problem is, first of all, each sitting CSM has a responsibility to do a good job and to fulfill our responsibilities. That's the first thing, but also the communication issues that we've talked about. But the final piece, of course, is that CCP needs to invest resources in promoting the election, in making the CSM visible, and explaining to players what we do. We certainly had some great statements there towards the end, but I think we all know that there could have been more support for the election, and there should always be that increasing support for the election. So John has done an excellent job since taking his CCP Dolan. I'm sorry, CCP Dolan has done an excellent job since taking the position of doing what he can to give us those tools, but he needs more support from the company. He needs more resources invested in this as well. because he's one guy, he can't do it all. So I think this voting problem that you're talking about, I think with the right amount of interest and drive for people that want to participate, it will be much less of an issue in the future.
Yeah, the STV is sorry to jump in there. The STV is a little bit more complex, but I mean, we are playing Eve, so I don't think people will be like that terrified of it. And like Hans and I forgot who was saying it is more fair. Hans and Two Step were saying it's definitely more fair. Your vote matters a little bit more in this system. So it looks more complex, and that probably does scare a lot of people at first. And then they probably remember that they're playing Eve, and it's probably the easiest thing they'll do that day. So yeah, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
No, exactly what Elise said. I mean, when you look at how this is not an easy game to play, and of all the things that you're going to do, voting in a system like this is probably the easiest thing you're going to do that day, like you said. And the bottom line of it is that it really all comes down to the number of votes and the people that are willing to vote. And as long as there's only 50 or 60,000 people voting every term, you're going to end up with, well, pretty much what you're going to probably have on CSM 8 and what you had on CSM 6 and 7. So if you want to see, things change, then it's a combination of CCP getting the word out and CSM getting the word out and all of you getting the word out, because if 100,000 people vote, you're going to get a more diverse group of people. Otherwise, it's going to be controlled by the people who aren't too lazy.
So, and the other thing I'll just throw in there is that I think this year we had a couple new initiatives. Some of you may have received an email from me.
You learned from the best, but you didn't quite do it as well.
Whoa! I know the number of people I emailed. It's slightly higher than the number of people you email. But I think that as we move forward, making sure that people know that the election is going on, what the CSM does, making sure that they value the institution enough to want to take the time to vote. I think those are all important things that we're definitely, we started doing to the best of our ability in CSM 8 elections, and we'll be rocking it hard in the CSM 9 elections.
All right, I have more questions, so.
Come on, bro, there's people behind you.
Let me take one more. All right, CSM, the STV system, again, there was a big push from the 0-0 community to get as many of their members elected across the various coalitions. Obviously, you guys have spent time thinking about this as well. How easy is it to game this system to a certain group's advantage? In the past, players have frequently outsmarted CCP's designs. How confident are you that you got it right?
So I will say that if anyone came up with a way to trick or cheat the single transferable vote system, they'll win a Nobel Prize for it, because real countries use this as their election system. We basically just copied them. So if they found out some sort of hack that we don't know about, they're in to make a lot of money and publish some thesis papers.
It's not so much the hack as it is that the type of people that participate in EVE elections are radically different than the type of people that generally participate in normal elections.
Challenge accepted.
0-0 alliances have a much higher proportional participation compared to the rest of the tables.
I think that's true, but I think that the best we can aspire to, in terms of voting system, is a system where we most fairly represent the people who voted. If you voted, you have the highest percentage chance of your voice being represented by the person you voted for. So in that case, the single transferable vote system works exactly as intended.
Yeah,
I can't take the opinions of people who do not vote.
So if you vote, you get a voice. If you don't vote, you're not going to represent it.
Yeah.
And if the 0-0 guys are the ones who vote, then they deserve all the seats. It's very simple.
Yeah, and if you remember in CSM 6, if you're worried that like the nullsec blocks will like take over, CSM 6 had 10 of the candidates from nullsec. So that was like pretty massive. And that was with the old system that's supposedly fair.
So you guys are confident that this is going to work?
Yeah, I think what we're going to find out pretty soon is this idea of 0-0 or any other large entity being able to sweep the vote or sweep the council is bullshit propaganda, because of exactly the same reason that Dolan is talking about. So the only way that horror story that's been just tossed carelessly all over the internet for laughs The only way that that would come to pass is literally if 0-0 voters were the only people that came and vote. So as long as that didn't happen, as long as there were high-sec people who voted, as long as there were low-sec people who voted, you're never going to see that.
But that's exactly what I said a minute ago.
And of course, you'll notice that a big part of the nullsec propaganda from the blocks this year was, oh, voting, you don't need to do it. It's, you know, I love the goon PDF that was floating around HiSec that basically said, because of all the voting this year, voting for nullsec will end on Thursday, but voting will be extended for HiSec and lowsec until Saturday.
All's fair.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Yeah. Hello, guys. I'm Baker from AHAR, a small little corporation in C6 that needs to be invaded. We are quite far too much, you know, it's far too much in our 52 process. So, is anyone from Pandemic Legion here? Where are you? We haven't seen you in our home. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys, for taking all your time to making you a better game. And I had to talk to the minions of CCP, and we really like to see, from the financial side as well, the whole 3 skill queue thing going through from the characters that we have on each account and having merging and stuff. So, are you guys getting involved in anything of the financial side of EVE and how the accounts work?
No. No. Money?
Why not?
Because we're not accountants.
Oh, yeah.
We are EVE players, but we're not accountants.
Well, I mean, yeah.
We're probably really good with Excel, probably better than most of the accountants. But I mean, CCP is the company, right? Like, they run a business. We're just kind of the guys that they talk to about the game. And I know a lot of people have misconceptions about what the CSM can do. Like, some people think they're going to be junior game designers. Some people think they're going to be like corporate consultants. And the fact is, it's neither, right? So the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can like be good on the CSM and useful.
Yeah. Do you think it would be a good idea to have 3 skill queues on an account?
For what? Sorry?
Do you think it would be a good idea to have, like, each account of 3 characters? Would it be good to be able to have 3 skill queues, like be able to train 3 characters at the same time?
Yes.
I think we all love skill points and want more of them. So yeah.
Can we have some hands up here in the public who thought it would be maybe a good idea to be able to train your accounts for Plex or Holsheim account? No? No? Good?
Clearly, if you want this implemented, you need to run for CSM.
I don't know what my chance will be. Thanks, guys. Thanks for standing up.
Hi. One of the things I noticed from CSM 7 is that a lot of you chose not to run for CSM 8. I was wondering what your opinions for why you decided to either run or not run for CSM 8.
Go in order. Why are you not running?
Oh, because I worked at the company for about 3.5 years. I've been on CSM for 2 years. I'm about to turn 40 years old. I have a kid. I have a family. I just don't have the time. Simple as.
Believe it or not, I was not originally planning to run for the next CSM. In fact, at the summer summit, I took Peter Sagan out for dinner and told him that this was going to be my last term. But then all of these douchebags bailed on me.
You're welcome.
You're the man.
And I felt that I had more to contribute and that there was a need for continuity. So I kind of felt like Michael Corleone, you know, just when I thought it was out, they dragged me back in. But I'll find out tomorrow whether or not I managed to squirt free and not get reelected.
I decided not to run for a couple of reasons. One was that, I live in the U.S. and I only get a couple of weeks of vacation a year. And spending all that time in Iceland is fun, but there's more in the world than just Iceland. And also, for me, it comes down to wanting to play the game more. Those of you in my corp who are, all wearing nice shirts, miss me. And they'd like me to play some more. And when you spend a lot of time talking about the game and things like that, I find it hard to get the energy to, want to play the game afterwards. So I just want to get back to playing. I want to be surprised by coming to FanFest and hearing about all these crazy things without saying, oh, I remember them telling me about that last week. You know, and I'm looking forward to speculating on the market around Patch Day, all the great things that you can do as players that you can't do as CSM.
So I took a break from schooling actually to do this. I felt this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was an important time where CCP was about to work on faction warfare, and I felt that, you know, my skill set was needed by the community, and I'd also just gotten married right before all this started. So my lovely wife that's in the audience has been incredibly patient with me as I've poured all this time. And I owe her more of my time, and so those are the two biggest reasons. Also, you know, like I just have said, I'm a player, and I have not played near as much in the last year because of all this, and I'm looking forward to having all three of these things back. My wife, my playtime, school, all of that, and we've accomplished enough that I think the CSM's in a really healthy place. I think we're going to have a really strong CSM 8 coming in, and I think the company's making good use of us. So I feel pretty comfortable stepping away from this at this time.
He also wanted free ships to Shanghai instead of just to Iceland.
Yeah,
there is that.
attempting to get away from CCP didn't work well. He's now on the Council of Planetary Management, the Dust version of CSM.
I will be doing this work for a few more months to help the Dust Council, for those of you that hadn't heard, but in general, is a full year. You know, is that something that is good for me or fair to my wife right now? No.
So I mean, my reason's a little bit different because I'm like a huge nerd and I can play EVE and I have fun doing both. But so anyways, CSM 6, I thought, which is when I was first involved, I was an alternate there, was hugely successful. It changed the way everything worked, and it sort of, I don't know, it sort of legitimized the CSM process a little bit more. Like every CSM is getting a little bit better. And I thought a large part of that was because there were so many fresh faces. Like, no one from CSM 5, bar Trevor, and I'm glad he was there, by the way, ran again for CSM 6, and I really liked that freshness, and we got to impart new ideas, fresh views, and stuff like that. And for CSM 7, a lot of the core of CSM 6 stayed, and we added some little bits in here, and it was great. But now I feel like I've given everything I know and everything I can say, and they kind of, CCP's in a great place. I trust them to make great decisions without me, and I also want to get step aside a little bit so other people can come in and bring the fresh ideas, because that's how the CSM evolves and it gets better and better. So that's essentially why.
For me, it was a really hard decision, and you know, it's always sacrifice. For making your hobby better, you sacrifice your vacation with daughter, your hobby playing with your aliens, and you know where's my aliens right now, and that was really sacrifice too. Can I say everyone? Sorry for small trauma. But literally this decision to enter election was made like literally 2 hours before the application period were closed. So that's really hard to, and I understand guys who is not running, because it is more than work really. It is not about being paid. It is about your responsibility for stuff you are doing and time you are spending to some hobby instead of your real life.
Thank you. So we only have 10 minutes left, so please keep it brief.
Oh, sure.
Oh, and guys on the stage, please keep it brief.
Hello, nerds. Admiral Boat here. Question for the... That's amazing. Yes.
And for the guy with the costume.
So, you are the go-between between players in EVE, right? So, what do you believe, like, how do you feel about scamming in EVE? Like, the level of scamming that it exists? I mean, it makes it hard for guys like NC or whatever to rent systems because there's just so many people renting systems to nobody. So my question is, what do you believe? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's a thing that should be bannable? I mean, how do you you feel about the sandbox version of scamming?
I think it's great. I love it. More of it. Fine.
Scamming is why I started playing the game. I read the article about the Guiding Hand Social Club, and I said, if this can happen in this game, I want a part of it. So I'm a fan. I don't do it myself, but I'm a fan. I like people to do it. Keep it up.
Everybody likes scamming, except when it happens to them.
There is I see Tarek Stork running around, and I like him, but Mothership Gun, but I still like him.
Hi, thank you.
Two-step, you in particular on the forums have done some call to arms of sorts, especially among that small portion of the community, the wormhole group. And CSM and CCP have, it's been apparent, I think, to the player base, made great strides to work together. But do you think it is still a leverage that the CSM kind of needs and utilizes to kind of rally the player base and bring out the pitchforks and torches to ensure that CCP does what we feel they need to be doing?
I guess I wish that never has to happen again. But at the time, and I still feel like it was the right thing to do, I think one thing that's a little misunderstood is if you actually go through and read the thread knot, which I did, which took forever, you people like to write, it was actually the politest thread knot I've ever seen. It was full of people saying, not, I'm going to unsub and I hate you CCP and you're terrible, saying, please think about me. And that's a really good thing. I think, people might take a glance at, oh, a 150-page forum thread, that must be terrible. And I think you have to draw the right conclusions from it. And I think talking to the people at CCP, I mean, poor CCP Dolan had to read that, and he told me he was going to go and clean the thread, and he didn't find posts to clean. And that's a few posts to clean. And if you talk to the people, on like CCP Fozzie and people like that who are going to be working on improvements for the POS system, they found a lot of useful feedback in that thread. So I think it was a good thing, and I wish I hadn't had to do it, and I wish CSM 8 doesn't have to do it, but I don't regret doing it.
I will comment that just real quick.
Yeah, real briefly.
All right, go.
All right, I'll speak real briefly because I was one of the few that disagreed with two-step. I didn't think that tactic was necessary at the time, and this is something that has surfaced as part of this leak about. We had talked about POS a whole lot the last year. We pushed hard for this, and we had talked at the summit about this package of improvements that came, and those commitments and the fact that those things were going to be done, I thought was well known to the CSM at the time the thread knot was posted. So the lesson that I hope people don't learn is that strong-arming sort of tactics aren't necessarily the way that things get done. I think Two-Step did a great job of supporting the community, but in general, I think we'd already accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, not having to go there. And I think just being diplomatic and being straightforward is most of the time sufficient, at least with the company culture that we're working with CCP right now.
So I will say personally, it was my first thread knot as
You're welcome.
Involved with CSM. It was an interesting experience, but from a completely objective standpoint, based on the general, it definitely beat the average in terms of people being well behaved and not breaking forum rules in comparison to all other forums. People were being less babies, one might say. I was doing a lead-in on baby joke.
Okay, yeah. First of all, can everyone look around at your neighbors and to make sure that CCP Puncturus is not in the audience? Right there. Where is she? She's over there.
Hi, bro!
Damn. Okay.
Cover her eyes.
Okay, I might as well do this now. I was going to get you all to troll her on Twitter about this, but as you know, she has a new baby. And if you've seen the Facebook feed, I mean, this baby is just too cute for words. I mean, it's so cute it should be illegal. But anyway, I thought I would make her a gift, and the other week, just before FanFest, I got a 3D printer. So I made a little paw here for the baby, and it's a rabbit. Actually, no, it has a little bell in it. It opens up, you see, and you can put whatever you want in it. So.
There you go. We'll make sure she gets that as soon as the panel's over. We'll make sure the baby can have fun with that as soon as the panel is over. A pod pilot in the making.
So there are 3 guys left. Just keep it short, please.
Speed questions.
Where specifically do you think the CSM8 process and CSM8 can improve over CSM7? I think that basically they need to just keep doing what we've been doing over the last 6 months or so leading up to Odyssey. We've learned a lot over the last year in terms of how the interaction works and doesn't work. CCP has found out that we can actually be a real resource as opposed to a hindrance. We get a lot more information than we ever used to, especially when it comes to things like running dev blogs past us first most of the time. And as long as they just keep going along with the path that's been set for them, then they should be fine.
Yeah, it's just a continuous process of getting a little bit more access each time, getting information, more information, getting it earlier, getting the opportunity to influence things and give feedback about more things faster and better. And CSM7 got the ability to do that much, much more than CSM6 or any previous CSM, and I hope that CSM8 leaves us in the dust.
Cool.
When it came to what happened at the end, at the end of the election last year, do you think that that's why we have so few candidates we had so few candidates for this year, and that the majority of them are both either null-sec or low-sec, and that there seems to be almost no high-sec candidates?
I'm not sure why. Are you talking about Mittens getting drunk? I don't know why that would make high-sec people not.
No. What happened after that?
What happened?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, spell it out. I can probably speak.
You're asking are you asking why there are less people trying to run for
and do you think it's a result of...
Are you running for CSM8?
No.
Then why not?
Because I'm unimportant and I only maintain a subscription because I hate Hawaiian
Was I important before I ran?